Hello folks, this week saw the full opening of the War Within's final season, Season 3, along with the Raid, Mythic Plus, and of course the race to World First. But that did not mean that Blizzard was taking a break, with the announcement of patch 11.2.5 along with Legion Remix, which looks like it will have quite a few changes compared to Mop Remix. And if that's not enough to look forwards to, next week we also have the big reveal of the Midnight expansion, and I'll be taking a brief look at what to expect. Let's dive in. With Season 3 now well underway, players of the Big 3, or maybe even Big 4 if we include Delves, have plenty to do. The initial indications are that the baseline of Mythic Plus is slightly easier than was the case in Season 2, likely around the equivalent of 1 key level, which does mean that I think a lot of folks will find themselves progressing a little bit further than they're used to. That is, though, with the exception of Priory of the Sacred Flame, which seems to be retaining its Season 2 title of being a bit of an outlier difficulty-wise. It's very strange to me that Blizzard have not done more to tame this dungeon. I've always felt that Priory had the potential to be an awesome experience, at least in terms of the vibe and layout. But it's, in my view, being marred by that feeling that it's always 1 or 2 key levels behind the rest. The new dungeon, Ecodome Aldani, in contrast, does look like it could end up being one of the favourites. I'm not always a fan of very open layout dungeons, but I have found this one to be quite fun, with a relatively short timer and some fun and engaging boss encounters. The new raid, Manaforge Omega, while disappointingly still only an 8-boss raid, is offering a series of genuinely fun boss encounters with interesting and sometimes different mechanics to deal with, even for tanks, and overall I am looking forward to progressing it. For the open world, we also got the belated launch of Ecological Succession. I think this is very much the type of feature that you will either love or hate. I am very much on the love front. I've always been a big fan of opportunities to be sent out into the older World of Warcraft zones. And while the quest line, which involved rounding up and caring for bees, did not have any new mechanics, when taken as a whole, it nevertheless did manage to feel quite different and fun, reminding me a little of the Little Scales daycare dailies from Dragonflight. I was hoping that this feature would manage to fill what is a bit of a gap in Koresh, where once you knock off the twice-a-week world quest, the map looks very bare and lacking in things to do in subsequent visits. Unfortunately, though, with Ecological Succession seemingly only offering a single daily quest every other day, I don't really think it's going to achieve that. I know that many people do appreciate not having that feeling of needing to log in every day, but I personally do like to be able to open the game map and always find something to do, which really doesn't seem to be the case in Koresh. Storyline wise, we also in theory got the final 2 chapters of the campaign, but for many players who won't be able to clear the raid in week 1, in reality they only got one of those chapters, and that chapter, while offering a couple of decent cinematic moments, really did feel like it was over before it got going. I won't spoil the final chapter, but I will say that it did manage to leave the story in a really good place. I had been a bit worried about where it would end up leaving Xal'atath, but I do think that that has been very well handled by the writers, and it manages to leave what has become World of Warcraft's best ever new villain in a really good place for the future of the story. The only one issue I do have is that with next week's Gamescon taking place during the US working day on Tuesday, that means that for even most North American people, we're going to be getting the midnight reveal and the next cinematic before they even manage to get a chance to experience that final chapter. Something that I think is going to make it much harder than usual for people to avoid those spoilers. All of this does reinforce for me the view that the release pacing of patch 11.2.0 has been a bit of a major miss by the World of Warcraft development team. I don't know how much of this is due to a lack of joined up thinking and how much is their long-term obsession with stretching the mid-expansion stories out to the point of harming them. But certainly this time around, I do think that the dev team have let the players down. Now, just before I move on and take a look at Legion Remix, I do have a couple of quickfire updates. If after clearing the raid and finishing the story, you started to experience some games crashes on startup, don't worry, it's not just you. It turns out that the new campfire scene that is awarded for completing the Ghost of Koresh campaign is rather badly bugged and can cause the character selection screen to crash. A pretty major issue, I think you'll agree. The Blizzard developers have now temporarily removed the offending scene, which should hopefully fix the issue. The scene will be restored once the issue is fixed, but it does mean that if you have been looking forwards to something new to look at on that startup screen, you are going to have a bit longer to wait. The other quickfire update is for players of Delves. If you've been experiencing a lack of progress in your Delver's journey, this also appears to be an unintended bug, with Blizzard announcing that they do plan to award all players some bonus Delver's Journey progress in the near future to make up for it, with the second step in the Delver's Journey opening up access to that all-important Delver's Journey map. This is something that I think a lot of Delve-only players will very much appreciate. Now, the reveal of patch 11.25 this week came as a bit of a surprise, at least to me. I'd personally been expecting Legion Remix to feature in the final patch 11.27, but as it turns out, it is going to be arriving a lot sooner than I think many of us expected. In a video update this week, linked down below, the team shared quite a few details about what we can expect, and the main watchword is changes. So let's dive in and take a look at what is going to be different this time around. By far the most iconic feature of Legion is of course the artifact weapon system, and it was of course inevitable that that would be making a return. And this is probably where the most noticeable changes are going to lie. Instead of just reprising the original artifact weapon trait trees, they are getting a brand new version which will use similar principles to the current talent tree system, with multiple paths and the ability to respec on the fly. This new artifact trait system is also going to be the replacement for the gem system for Mop Remix. The other iconic feature was of course the class order halls, and they are for sure making a return, but with one very welcome change, which is the removal of those annoying mission table quests. The bronze currency is also making a return, but this time around it is going to be a cosmetic only currency. Instead of using it for gear upgrades, the higher level gear is just going to be dropping from doing usual harder content. One major new addition is Mythic Plus. Blizzard did not share any details beyond the name Time Warp Keys, but at the PAX East announcement a few months ago, they did predict that people who did do Legion Mythic Plus would expect to be pushing their keys a lot higher than they do in retail. However, Legion Mythic Plus is also going to be bringing back a perhaps much less welcome old friend, and that's the pre-war within affixes. Now, I will say that this could just be a PTR testing glitch, but the keystones on the PTR have this rather tasty and very familiar list of affixes. However, Wowhead have also data mined this other set of affixes. Now, Wowhead are interpreting these as being seasonal affixes, but they kinda remind me a lot of the War Within affix system, so this may just be a work in progress, and I guess we'll probably need to wait for future builds to find out more about exactly what the Remix affix system is going to look like. For open world players, there are also going to be some changes, including the option of choosing increased difficulty via a Diablo-style world tier system, with the heroic world tier being described by Blizzard as offering a much more vanilla classic level of difficulty to the open world. And there's also going to be a daily version of the Call of the World Soul weekly quest, where we get a choice of 4 activities to pursue for the day. These quests have a 6-day cycle, which means if you skip a day or two, you'll be able to catch up on any missed ones. I think though the biggest change is that we're not going to be getting all of the content right away. Instead, the team plans to take a leaf out of the book of classic Season of Discovery and release content in a series of phases about 2 weeks apart. The phases are largely based on the main Legion patches, and each phase will have one of the main raid tiers. However, there is also going to be a much longer period of at least a month at the end of Legion Remix for people who want to do all the content in one go to get in and do it. And the whole thing is going to be wrapped up with a final phase with a brand new event, which is intended to give Remix an appropriate send-off. To allow those of you who have far too many characters to get into Remix, we're also going to be getting an extra 5 character slots. But it is also worth calling out that only the classes that were available for Legion will be able to enter Remix. So sadly, there will be no Evoker class haul. Speaking about the end of Remix, new characters are not locked into Remix until the event ends. This time, we will be able to transfer our characters over to the live game early, though the WoW team do warn that this is a one-way process, so no going back and forth. Reward-wise, there is going to be a brand new set of Fel-infused class mounts. These can be earned by completing each class campaign. But if you don't want to have to level up 12 characters, the good news is that they can also be purchased using bronze. Along with this, there will of course be plenty of transmogs, including an Azshara themed robe and a new Fel version of the Scythe of the Unmaker. I started playing World of Warcraft right at the end of Legion, around when patch 735 came out, and as the expansion wound up, I do remember feeling a little bit of regret that I had not been able to experience the hype of Legion as it came out. This will not replace that missed experience, but I do kinda like the idea of that phased release. Time gating often gets a bad rep, and rightly so, but I do think that this release plan is likely to be an example of it being done right, giving people a large amount of content and raiders time to clear and gear before moving on, and I am expecting it to work out pretty well. So overall, I am looking forward to this, though I do worry that I'll still be a little bit occupied by Season 3, especially at launch. And on the subject of Season 3, patch 11.2.5 did announce a couple of other features, the first of which is confirmation that Turbo Boost is indeed returning. According to the pre-patch development notes, this is also going to be getting a staged release, with the increase in Heroic and Myth Track gear item levels launching with patch 11.2.5, and the rest of Turbo Boost, including the return of those puzzling cartel chips, a few weeks later, most likely around week 12 of the season, when the crest caps are normally removed. There is no word if that crest cap removal might end up happening a bit sooner due to this, but I personally suspect that it will remain around week 12, and that could mean that we won't be able to freely upgrade our stockpiles of lower level crests to enable us to get a lot of item levels in one go. This, I suspect, is why the team are releasing the increased item level caps a little earlier, as the crest caps will slow down the rate that we can upgrade that gear. But I also think that this is going to end up making Turbo Boost feel a lot less hype. I suspect that the team did not really intend for us to get so much extra power in one go during Season 2's Turbo Boost, but I do think that that was a major contributor to the success of the feature, and it does remain to be seen how this change will play out in practice. Now, for Delvers, the purchasable Delve trinkets, which unlock later in the Delver's journey, are also going to be getting a boost from the current champion track up to Heroic. But there is no word if we'll also see an increase in the rate of gilded crests dropping this time around. Thanks to some data mining by Wowhead, we've also been able to glean some potential details about the timing of Legion Remix. Please do keep in mind that early PTR schedules do sometimes change, but these suggest that Remix will run from October the 7th through to January the 19th. October the 7th is 9 weeks after patch 11.2.0's release date, and so it could well also be the release date for patch 11.2.5. But the timing of the end date is the thing that is most interesting to me. Blizzard have said that they do plan to speed up their patch release cadence, something that has been widely speculated is meaning they are moving to an 18-month cycle. The War Within's release date was August the 26th, 2024, and late February next year would mark the 18-month anniversary, with recent World of Warcraft expansions having a 4 to 5 week pre-patch. January the 20th, the day after Remix ends, could therefore be a very credible date for the 12.0 pre-patch release. And that's a date that also fits very well with Blizzard's 8-week patch cycle. This is just speculation, of course, and it's not something that is likely to be confirmed in next week's Gamescom announcement. But I do think that the signs of a late February release for Midnight are starting to look pretty strong right now. We're also going to be seeing the release of the already announced updates to the Cooldown Manager. I already covered the specifics of that a few weeks ago, but if you missed it, Blizzard are basically planning to add a ton of customization to the Cooldown Manager to close the gap between it and the widely used week order pack. By the time this video goes live, we'll be just a few days away from the start of Gamescon, at which the Midnight expansion is getting its full reveal, and Blizzard have shared a bunch of fresh info about what to expect, along with confirmation that most of the panels are going to be made available online as VODs shortly after they happen. So let's take a little dive into that schedule. Gamescon's opening night live takes place on Tuesday at 8 PM Central European Time. That's 11 AM Pacific Time, and will include the main Midnight cinematic. These cinematics are usually full photorealistic CGI renders and are invariably pretty hype. It is worth saying that Opening Night Live is not a Warcraft event. It will last about 2 to 3 hours and will cover dozens of other games, with World of Warcraft probably only getting a 5 to 10 minute spot. Now, in their initial Gamescom announcement a few weeks ago, Blizzard also said that the Midnight reveal would take place immediately after an Opening Night Live, featuring executive producer Holly Longdale, senior game director Ian Hazzikostas, and creative director Chris Metzen. But in this latest announcement, this has now been described as merely a gameplay trailer, which kinda sounds like a pretty major downgrade. I have a suspicion that this could just be a communication slip. And hopefully we are still getting the full reveal on Tuesday, most likely kicking off around 10 PM Central European Time. In addition to that though, we do have a schedule for the follow-up developer deep dive panels and events. This includes on Thursday 21st at 1 PM Central European Time, Ian Hazzikostas and Associate Design Director Maria Hamilton doing a deep dive into the new zones, quests and stories. And on Saturday the 23rd at 11 AM Central European Time, Ian and Associate Game Director Paul Kubitz will be doing a deep dive into the main game systems. Saturday and Sunday are also going to have a bunch of other community events, including developer interviews with Taliesin and Evitel and Mr. GM. And for those of you who are going to be there in person, there are going to be meet and greets with the developers, content creators, and a cosplay contest. I'm personally not going to be able to make it in person, so I'm super happy to know that most of the panels, and hopefully also those interviews, will make it online. These events are always super hype, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about what we can expect in Midnight. While we already know quite a fair bit about Midnight, such as it at least in part being set around Silvermoon, and of course having player housing, I have a very strong suspicion that Blizzard have been keeping something secret up their sleeves, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that is. One thing though that has jumped out at me was how Midnight focused all the team's publicity around Gamescom is. Normally it's such a major event, I would also expect some classic coverage as well, but at least based on what Blizzard have shared this week, I have a sneaking suspicion that classic fans may end up being a little bit disappointed. But what about all of you? What are you hoping to see announced at the big event? I'm personally looking forward to more information and player housing exteriors, especially an alternative to those orc roundhouses for my Horde friends. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this update helpful, entertaining, or even just plain annoying, then do let me know by hitting that like icon. And if you want to support my channel to grow and help me to make more of these videos, along with my other content, then do hit that subscribe button right now before you forget. And if you don't want to miss out whenever I release a new video, then as well as subscribing, you can follow me on social media for notifications. My links are in the description below as well. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.